Without further ado, I'll get started. If you do have any questions, please do feel free to just pop them in the chat. But we'll be talking a little bit about sort of the language functionality following the recent update on Lightkey. I can speak a little bit of Spanish, but I'm not fluent by any means. So if you have questions about the language functionality, about sort of really high level verb use or really advanced vocabulary, I might not be able to help, but you'll see how it works, and I'll tell you about the most recent update with Lightkey. Fantastic. Well, first off, just in case you haven't updated, I'll just quickly show you how to update using your Lightkey. So just simply open up your dashboard right here. I'll just point out I've saved over 2 hours in the last 3 weeks. So as you can see, it does help me personally, and I'll go into that in my dyslexia webinar later on. But you come down to this section marked license, come up to the top marked about, just click that, come down to this button marked check for updates, and simply give it a click. Follow the on-screen instructions. It might ask you to close down any browsers you have open, any Word documents, just so it can reset its prediction profile. But it's just as simple and easy as that. Let's get into what version 29.05 is all about. So there's been 3 major things that have happened. Significant multilingual improvements. And that's been in a variety of languages. Lightkey does operate in 80 languages. So French, German, Italian have had major improvements. Spanish as well. Portuguese is in the works at the moment, so that should be in the next update, as well as Swedish, for example. If there is any particular languages you're interested in for your students that you find quite common, let me know afterwards and I can check whether it's on the list or it has been improved upon as well. But the main core languages within education, such as French, German, Spanish, Italian, have all been improved. This might not be relevant for everybody. This is more maybe perhaps a workplace thing, but Lightkey is now native for ChatGPT, as well as certain CRMs have had better native operation with Lightkey, and all Atlas and browser-based solutions such as Jira, Confluence, and Trello, for example, are all now native with Lightkey 100%. As well as smart time language detection. So if you've ever seen me talk about Lightkey before and the language functionality in a generic webinar, you'll know it can work across 2 different languages if you use it frequently, because it does learn from the user. So if I was, say, switching between Spanish and English, over time, it will learn that I do that, and it will just automatically change the language. And this makes it much more advanced, much smarter, much quicker, that process. But for today, I'm going to come down to keyboard and just change it to Spanish, just so there's no confusion. So Lightkey languages. So Lightkey works in 80+ different languages, and that does include Welsh, Irish, Scottish, Ukrainian, if that's relevant to anyone on the call today. But say there's a Welsh medium school, for example, this is quite a useful tool in using Welsh within the classroom. We have a setting called read aloud, and that doesn't actually operate in all 80 languages. Those are languages through the Windows narrator packs. So again, you can look on your Windows computers to see which languages are operational, or perhaps let me know afterwards and I can just quickly check for you at your convenience. That's quite all right, Frank. I should have a copy of the transcript myself in any case, but thank you very much for the offer. Let's carry on. So all the functionality that you would get within English, for example, the grammar, the spelling, the punctuation, all works within all 80 different languages there. There's been significant grammar improvements in this update. That's what we'll always keep working on. So if you ever find any issues with that. So to activate a new language, I just open up my Lightkey again. Come down to prediction profile right here, and I can just scroll down and select whichever language I see fit. And you simply just click it on or click it off to activate the language. You can also find your categories here and upload any custom categories you might have. So a student could upload their Spanish textbook, for example, in PDF format or Word format, or whichever format suits them, and then help Lightkey in that learning process and help them in their learning process while using it in various different languages as well. I've just activated Spanish. Come back here. So first off, spelling. So I've got a few examples of spelling here. So I'll do airport, car, and table. Lightkey is automatically trained in various methods of spelling, such as phonological, such as key location, and many, many more. But if I just write, so for example, I spelled it perhaps how someone learning the language from an English perspective might spell it in the first instance, and they can perhaps use this as a method of learning to improve their Spanish vocabulary as well. And I'll just simply hit tab to accept that. Coche, so that ends like that. So I wrote coach, and again, it's been able to take my spelling and identify what I was trying to spell within that that example. And of course, table, which is mesa, put that, and again, quite easily been able to identify the correct spelling. So if a student does have dyslexia like myself, and they're trying to learn another language, maybe they make typos, mistakes, they can use this to find the correct words and help in their learning process when learning a different language, for example. Next is this little symbol here. And if you look at your keyboard, you're not going to see this, but this is called ñ, and it's a special character in the alphabet, in the Spanish alphabet. If you had a Spanish keyboard, it would be on there, but traditional English keyboards, like most of us would have on the call, this particular symbol isn't going to be on, but it is important when writing in Spanish. So if I take the word español here, you can see it's included the ñ there. So it will go back and it will add that symbol in for you, as opposed to having to, what I used to do when I first started learning Spanish, go to Google, type in, give me the ñ symbol, and then I would copy and paste that into my document. So that's going to save students quite a bit of time. It sounds like a really small thing, but that's something I struggled with personally when I was learning Spanish at the beginning. You could also use it for the grammar. Again, I'm not fluent in grammar myself. There's a lot of grammar when learning Spanish, for example, such as past tense, such as future tense, the real future tense. It's very complicated, but I'll just keep to the very basic sort of grammar here. So, yo como, I eat. For example, nosotros, which is we. Comemos, we eat. So it's changing the end of the verb to make it grammatically correct in these instances. Now, it's not 100% perfect. There are improvements that could be made, and we are making them over time. But I think in terms of the learning process, in terms of getting those really frustrating bits of grammar, which are really a struggle for myself and other learners when we were all learning, this can help sort of identify the correct words. You might not know as well, but everything is masculine or feminine in the Spanish language. So it'll either end in an O for masculine or A for feminine. Lightkey can identify the masculine and the feminine. For example, if I write el horno, you can see it ends in an O, quite simple, straightforward. Or la nevera. Sorry, I spelled that incorrectly, but it's gone back and it's corrected my spelling for me anyway. But it'll be able to be used to sort of help you with those genders, which is something that's always been a bit of a struggle when learning a language. So you can also use the text predictions, all the functionality, and you can use it anywhere like you would do with your English. You can use it on your emails. You can use it anywhere on your WhatsApp. If I want to talk to my mother-in-law because my partner is Spanish, that's why I learned. So I can text her through WhatsApp on my computer using Lightkey. But I can use this sentences up to 18 word. So I'll take one I use quite a lot, just so it lands very, very quickly. Gracias por venir. Gracias por venir. If I do this enough time, it'll be able to identify my full sentence and I won't have to write out the whole thing. So if I write the same thing over and over again, I'll be able to save myself the time in doing so. It's taking a bit longer today because I think it's getting confused with Avenir, for example. But it can learn, as I say, up to 18 words, including the punctuation in your sentences there. So the next thing I'll talk about is read aloud. And I think this has some really useful applications. When I first started learning Spanish, I was very fortunate because I lived in Valencia with my partner's family for a while, lived there for a year, and I could hear the actual pronunciations because my mother-in-law doesn't speak a word of English, so I really had to try it on occasion. And something like read aloud will help those students who maybe learn through audio, who learn through hearing things instead of just reading, which, as I say, dyslexics can struggle. So if I come to my Lightkey page, I don't have to come to the dashboard, but I'm choosing to here. Come up to the accessibility settings here. Come down to the bottom where you can see read aloud. Just a quick side note, Lightkey is screen reader enabled, so even if a student has visual impairments, for example, they can still do all this stuff that I'm showing you today. But if I come down to Spanish, predictions set as male, female for corrections. We found it quite important just to differentiate between sort of corrections and predictions in terms of just being able to identify straight away. But I can change this just with the drop down, change the speed, and just simply tick it on with the tab. We come back to my page here.
Gracias por venir.
As you can see, it'll read it out with a Spanish voice, which again, if I'm trying to learn a specific word, trying to learn a specific pronunciation, I can use this to help me out with that. So if I just turn that off again, so I just simply come back to my accessibility settings, click the tab, quite simply off. So that was it. That was the main functionality when using Lightkey in Spanish. Everything you can do in English, you can see, you can simply do it in another language as well, and help students who are perhaps ESL students, MFL students, students who want to speak in a second language or want to learn at some point. Does anyone have any questions for me on that? Anything they're interested in learning more about? Anything they want me to go over again? Fantastic. Doesn't look like any questions. That's good. That means I covered everything, which is brilliant.